My phone buzzed at 5:40 in the morning, and the words on the screen felt like a fist closing around my heart. My daughter had texted, "Dad, change of plans. You're not coming to the lake house this weekend. Craig's parents are staying in your room." By Sunday night, the deed to that lake house had a new owner, and it wasn't her. When she finally drove up the gravel road, she found moving trucks in the driveway and strangers carrying out the furniture she thought was hers to keep forever. Before I walk you through exactly how a quiet, patient old man dismantled his own daughter's stolen inheritance piece by piece, tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from tonight, my friend. And if you've ever had to teach someone you love a lesson they never saw coming, go ahead and hit that like button for me. My name is Walter Nash. I'm 68 years old, and for 36 years I built and sold heavy equipment out of a lot in Toledo, Ohio, the kind of business where a man's word and a man's signature were the only currency that mattered. I built that business from a single rusted forklift and a folding table in a gravel yard. I built it so my daughter, Rebecca, would never have to know what it felt like to go without. It was a Friday morning, still dark outside, the kind of gray Ohio dark that sits heavy over the rooftops in early spring. I was at my kitchen table with black coffee going cold in front of me, staring at the empty chair across from mine. That chair used to belong to my wife, Carol. She'd been gone 4 years now, taken by a stroke that came out of nowhere on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon while she was clipping roses in the backyard. The house had been quiet ever since. Painfully quiet. The kind of quiet that makes a grown man start talking out loud to nobody just to hear a voice in the room. My phone buzzed against the table, and I figured it was Rebecca confirming what time I'd be driving up to the lake house that Friday evening. We had a tradition, her and me, going back 11 years now. Ever since I bought that little cabin on Sandusky Bay as a place for our family to gather every spring. I pictured maybe a text about what groceries to bring or whether I should stop for firewood on the way. Instead, the message hit me like a physical blow to the chest. "Dad, change of plans. You're not coming to the lake house this weekend. Craig's parents are staying in your room. We just think it'll be easier this way." I sat there in the dim kitchen light and read it 4 times, like maybe the letters would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. My room. My room, in my house. The one I had paid for in full, cash, 11 years ago. The one I had built a screened-in porch onto with my own 2 hands the summer after Carol got her diagnosis, so she'd have somewhere peaceful to sit. And now my own daughter was informing me, by text message before 6 in the morning, that I was no longer welcome under its roof. Let me give you some context here, friend, because this wasn't just some little cottage. This was a 4-bedroom lake house on 11 acres of waterfront property, appraised at just under $1.6 million. I bought it outright the year my company had its best quarter ever, and I put it in a family trust with Rebecca, named as the primary beneficiary, because I wanted her to have something permanent, something nobody could ever take from her the way life had taken her mother from me. I never once asked her or her husband Craig for a dime toward the taxes or the upkeep. I paid for all of it myself, gladly, because that house was the one place on this earth where I still felt Carol's presence. In the rose bushes she planted along the dock, in the porch swing where she used to read in the evenings. My chest went tight. I picked up my phone and called Rebecca directly. It rang once, twice, and then went dead. She'd rejected the call. My own daughter, the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders through the cornfields behind our old house, the woman whose entire wedding I paid for down to the last centerpiece, was too much of a coward to even hear my voice. I took a breath and dialed again. This time somebody picked up, but it wasn't Rebecca. "Hello, Walter." It was Craig, my son-in-law, using that smooth, rehearsed tone he always used right before he said something that would make my blood run cold. He never called me Dad. Not once in 6 years of marriage to my daughter. "Put Rebecca on the phone, Craig," I said, keeping my voice level. Though there was a storm building somewhere behind my ribs, he let out this little sigh, like I was the one being unreasonable. "She's getting the kids ready, Walter. And honestly, there's not much to discuss. My parents have never had a proper vacation in their whole lives. They raised 4 kids on a factory floor wage and never once complained. They deserve this. Your room has the best view of the water, and frankly, at your age, all those stairs down to the dock aren't exactly safe. We just think it's smarter for everybody if you stay home this time." I sat there gripping the phone, staring out at the gray morning sky through my kitchen window, letting his words wash over me. "At your age, all those stairs. I'd built houses with these hands. I'd carried steel beams up scaffolding until I was 62 years old, and now I was too fragile to walk down to my own dock. "We'll bring you back something nice from the Marina gift shop," Craig added, and I could hear the smugness dripping off every word. "Just relax and enjoy some quiet time. We'll see you when we're back in Toledo." And then the line went dead. He'd hung up on me. I set the phone down on the counter and stood there in the silence for a long minute, just listening to the refrigerator hum and the clock ticking on the wall. In another life, a different man might have thrown that coffee mug straight through the window, but that's not who I am, and it never has been. 36 years running heavy equipment sales taught me one hard truth. When something breaks, you don't scream about it. You go find out exactly where the cracks started, and then you fix it with your own two hands, no matter how long it takes. I walked down the hall to my study, sat down at my desk, and opened my laptop. I needed to see the actual paperwork with my own eyes. I pulled up the trust documents for the lake house, the ones I'd had drafted 7 years ago by my attorney, my old friend Gerald Voss, a man who'd handled every legal matter I'd had since before Rebecca was even born. I read through every page slowly, my hands steady on the keyboard, and that's when the second gut punch landed. 3 weeks earlier, someone had filed an amendment to the trust, adding Craig's parents, Donald and Patricia Ferris, as co-beneficiaries with equal rights to occupy and eventually inherit the property. My signature was on it, except I had never signed anything. I zoomed in on the electronic signature block, the one that was supposed to require my personal authentication code, and I felt something cold settle into my stomach. It was a forgery, a careful one, but a forgery all the same. Likely built off an old signed document they'd scanned and pasted onto something new. I sat back in my chair, letting the full weight of it settle over me. This wasn't just an ungrateful daughter uninviting her aging father from a weekend at the lake. This was fraud. Somebody had forged my signature on a legal trust document worth over $1.5 million, and that somebody had access to my personal files, my old documents, probably things sitting in a filing cabinet in my own house that Rebecca had helped herself to on one of her visits. My phone buzzed again on the desk. It was Rebecca's name lighting up the screen this time. I let it ring 3 times before I answered, because I wanted her to sit in the discomfort of her own actions for just a little while longer. "Dad? Are you there?" Her voice came through thin and shaky. "Yes, Rebecca." "I'm here," I said, my voice flat, the same tone I used to use with a supplier who thought he could slip a defective part past me on a big contract. She started talking fast, tripping over her own words. I said, "Dad, I'm so sorry about how that text came out. Craig didn't mean for it to sound so harsh. It's just, there's something going on with his mother's health that we haven't told anyone about yet. She's been dealing with severe anxiety since Donald's heart scare last year, and her doctor said she needs a completely calm, low-stress environment to recover. That's really what this weekend is about. It's not about you at all." I closed my eyes and let this new lie pour into my ear. 3 days earlier, I had personally seen Patricia Ferris at the farmer's market downtown, laughing loudly with her sister, hauling 2 full bags of tomatoes, and looking about as anxious as a woman on a beach vacation. This whole story had been built fast, and built cheap, the way people build things when they're desperate, and don't expect anybody to check their work. It's just for a little while, Dad," Rebecca continued, her voice climbing toward that pleading tone she used to use as a teenager when she wanted the car keys. "You know how important it is to support family during a health crisis. We didn't want to stress you out either, honestly, with all the stairs and everything. We're going to figure out a fair arrangement for everybody going forward. I promise. Please don't be angry. Please just understand." End quote. End quote. I thought about Carol in that moment, about how she used to march Rebecca right back to whatever mess she'd made as a teenager, and stand there until she owned up to it, face to face. No excuses. Carol believed in raising a daughter with a spine. But somewhere between college and marrying Craig, Rebecca had traded that spine in for somebody else's approval, and I hadn't stopped it soon enough. I didn't tell her what I knew. I didn't mention the forged signature, or the amendment, or Patricia at the farmer's market with her tomatoes. Instead, I took a slow breath and let my voice go soft, gentle, exactly like a tired old man who just wanted his little girl to be happy. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. "If Patricia needs peace and quiet, then of course she should have the room with the water view. Family takes care of family. Don't you worry about me one bit. I'll be just fine here at the house." There was this long exhale on the other end of the line, this wave of relief flooding through the phone. "Really, Dad? You're not upset?" "Not even a little," I lied, smooth as glass. "Go on and enjoy your weekend. Give the kids a hug from their old grandpa." "I love you, Dad," she said. And for just a second, just a flicker, I heard something that sounded almost like the real Rebecca underneath all that borrowed confidence. "I love you too, honey," I said, and I meant it, even as I ended the call and sat there staring at my own reflection in the dark screen. Because loving somebody and letting them rob you blind are two very different things, and I had spent 4 years since Carol died confusing the two. They thought they'd handled me. They thought the tired old widower had rolled over easy, grateful just to avoid a confrontation. They had absolutely no idea what they'd just set into motion. I picked up the phone and called Gerald Voss. "Walter," he said, picking up on the second ring. "It's not even 7 in the morning. This better be good. Gerald, I need you to pull the trust file on the lake house. Somebody amended it. My signature's on there, and I never signed a thing in my life that looked like that." There was a pause, then the sound of Gerald sitting up straighter in whatever chair he was in. "Give me 20 minutes. While I waited, I did something I hadn't done in longer than I care to admit. I drove out to the lake house myself, 45 minutes north along the bay, and I parked a quarter-mile down the access road, out of sight of the driveway. I walked the rest of the way through the tree line, the same way I used to walk a job site before the crew arrived, checking for problems nobody wanted me to see. I could hear voices carrying from the screened porch, the one I'd built with my own hands. "She bought it completely," Craig was saying, laughing that easy laugh of his. "Told you the health story would work. Old Walter's practically desperate for Rebecca's approval since Carol passed. He'll believe anything if it means keeping the peace. We just need him compliant until the guardianship paperwork clears," came a second voice. Donald Ferris, Craig's father, his tone flat and businesslike, like he was discussing a construction permit instead of his son's father-in-law. "Once the doctor signs off on the cognitive evaluation, it won't matter what he remembers signing or not signing. The judge sees a diagnosis and a documented pattern of confusion, and that's the whole ballgame." My blood went cold standing there in the trees. Guardianship, cognitive evaluation. They weren't just after the lake house. They were building a paper trail to have me declared legally incompetent. "Rebecca still feels guilty," came a third voice. "Patricia. She keeps saying he seemed sad on the phone." "He's always sad," Craig said dismissively. "He's been sad for 4 years. That's exactly what makes this easy. A grieving old man living alone, isolating himself, forgetting things. That's not manipulation, Dad. That's just describing the last 4 years of his life to a judge. We're not lying about anything. We're just arranging the truth a little." I stood absolutely still among those trees, my heart hammering, my hands steady as stone the way they always went when things got serious on a job site. They had been planning this for months, maybe longer. The forged signature on the trust amendment was just the opening move. The real prize was guardianship over me entirely, control of my equipment company's remaining assets, my retirement accounts, everything Carol and I had spent 36 years building. I walked back through those trees the same careful way I'd come in, and I drove straight back to Toledo without a single word to anybody. Gerald met me at his office an hour later. His tie loosened, 2 cups of coffee already poured. I told him everything, word for word, exactly as I'd heard it through that porch screen. His face went through about 4 different shades of angry while I talked. "Walter, I have to be straight with you," he said when I finished. "A guardianship petition built on a fabricated cognitive evaluation is elder fraud, plain and simple. And if they've already got a doctor lined up to sign off on something false, we're looking at a criminal conspiracy, not just a nasty family dispute." "I know exactly what it is, Gerald," I said. "I want to know exactly how far along they are, and then I want to know how we bury it." Gerald spent the better part of that morning making calls, pulling favors from 30 years of practicing law in that county courthouse. By early afternoon, he had the full picture. The guardianship petition was drafted and sitting with a probate attorney downtown, waiting on one final signature from a physician named Dr. Aaron Kessler, a man who, it turned out, had his medical license suspended twice in the last decade for exactly this kind of thing, writing fraudulent evaluations for families looking to seize control of an elderly relative's estate. "They picked their doctor carefully," Gerald said, sliding a printout across his desk. "This man specializes in exactly what you overheard. He's done it in at least 2 other counties that I could find in 20 minutes of searching. The filing date they're targeting is the Monday after this weekend, right after everybody gets back from your lake house. I sat there looking at that printout, feeling something inside me go cold and clear. The same feeling I used to get on a job site when a foundation cracked, and I had to figure out exactly how deep the rot went before I could fix it. "Here's what we're going to do," I said. We didn't confront them that weekend. That would have been the easy move, and the easy move is almost always the wrong one. Instead, we let them go up to that lake house Friday evening, exactly as planned. Let Donald and Patricia settle into my room with that water view, let them all sit out on Carol's porch drinking wine and congratulating themselves on how smoothly the old man had folded. Monday morning, while they were still packing up to head home, Gerald filed an emergency motion with the county to formally revoke the trust amendment on the grounds of forgery, backed by a handwriting analyst who confirmed within an hour what we already knew: that signature wasn't mine. Because I was the sole original grantor of that trust, and because the amendment was fraudulent from the moment ink hit paper, the entire document was null. The lake house reverted fully back to my name alone, no longer touched by anyone else's claim. At the same time, Gerald forwarded everything we had: the forged signature, the recorded testimony of what I'd overheard through that porch screen, and Dr. Kessler's disciplinary history, directly to the State Attorney General's office handling elder fraud cases, along with a formal report to the County Medical Board. And I made one more call that Monday morning, to a property management company I'd worked with for years. I instructed them to change every lock on that lake house that very afternoon, and to have a moving crew meet Rebecca's family at the end of the driveway, with everything that belonged to them, packed and ready to go, nothing more. Rebecca called me at 4:15 that afternoon. I let it ring 6 times before I answered. "Dad, what is going on?" Her voice was cracking, high and frightened in a way I hadn't heard since she was 9 years old and lost at a county fair. "There are men here putting our things in a truck. The locks don't work. Craig says something about a legal filing. He's not making sense, Dad. Please tell me what's happening." I let the silence sit there for a moment before I spoke, letting her feel the same cold uncertainty I'd felt reading that text message 4 days earlier. "I don't have dementia, sweetheart," I said finally, my voice steady and quiet. "But I did overhear a very interesting conversation on my own back porch Friday night." The silence on her end was total. I could hear Craig somewhere behind her, his voice rising in panic, demanding to know what I meant. "The trust amendment was forged, Rebecca," I continued. "The signature on it wasn't mine, and a judge agreed with that this morning. The lake house belongs to me again, free and clear. And the guardianship petition your husband and his parents have been building against me for months, the one with Dr. Kessler's name on it that's currently sitting on a state attorney general's desk right now, along with everything I heard you all say out on that porch." "Dad, please," Rebecca whispered, and I could hear her starting to cry, the real kind of crying, not the performance she'd given me over the phone 4 days earlier. I didn't know it would go this far. I swear I didn't understand what Craig and his parents were actually planning. I just wanted everybody to get along. "I believe that you didn't want to hurt me on purpose, Rebecca," I said, and I meant every word of it. "But you let it happen. You handed a stranger your father's signature, and never once asked why. You sat in a room and let people plan to take away my rights, my company, everything your mother and I built, and you told yourself it wasn't your problem because you weren't the one holding the pen." She was sobbing now, saying my name over and over, saying she was sorry, saying she wanted to fix this. And for the first time in 4 days, I let something soften in my chest, just a little, because underneath everything, she was still my daughter, and I hadn't raised her to be this person alone in a room full of wolves. "I'm not cutting you off, Rebecca," I said quietly. "I'm cutting Craig's family off, permanently, and I'm asking you to think very hard tonight about which family you actually want to belong to. My door is open, theirs is closed. That's a decision only you can make, and I'm not going to make it for you." I ended the call, and I sat there in my quiet kitchen for a long while after, looking at that same empty chair across the table, wondering what Carol would have said, whether she'd have moved faster than me, or slower, whether she'd have forgiven Rebecca on the spot the way a mother sometimes can when a father can't quite get there yet. 3 weeks later, Dr. Kessler's medical license was permanently revoked, and formal fraud charges were filed against him and against Craig's father for conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse. Craig filed for divorce from Rebecca 2 months after that. Once it became clear his family's scheme had collapsed entirely, and there would be no $1.5 million lake house waiting at the end of it. I heard through Gerald that Craig moved back in with his parents, the same parents who are now facing their own separate legal troubles. Rebecca showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon in early June, alone, no explanation needed. Just her standing on the porch with red eyes and a small suitcase, asking if she could stay for a little while until she figured out her next steps. I stepped aside and let her in without a word, the way I always would, because that's what family means, even after everything. We spent that whole evening out on the back porch, the one I'd built for her mother, and for the first time in 4 years, that empty chair across the table didn't feel quite so empty anymore. I still drive up to the lake house most weekends now, sometimes with Rebecca, sometimes alone. I sit out on that dock in the evenings and I think about Carol, about the roses she planted, about the daughter we raised together, and the mistakes I made trying to raise her alone after she was gone. I think about how easy it is for people to mistake grief for weakness, and how wrong they always turn out to be. I used to think that building something meant pouring concrete and raising steel, that a man's legacy was measured in what he left standing after he was gone. But I learned something different these last few months. A legacy isn't the house, or the money, or the company with your name still on the sign downtown. It's whether the people you love come back to you when everything else has fallen away. Whether they choose you when choosing you costs them something. My daughter chose me, eventually, later than I would have liked, but she chose me all the same. And every evening I sit on that dock and watch the sun go down over the water. I understand a little more clearly what her mother would have wanted me to remember. That the truest thing you can build in this life isn't a company or a house at all. It's the kind of man your children still want to come home to, even after they've forgotten, for a little while, who taught them how.